Okay, welcome back. We're gonna start texturing this, and the thing we want to do is to make sure that your pieces are separated. We want the top to be connected to the bottom. Now let's just say I went ahead in the last lesson. I told you to combine everything. So if we do a combine and we save it out, and we realize, wow, I made a mistake about combining stuff, you can go in here and you notice there's a polyunite 1 connected to it. That's just the history of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here, and you can separate this again, objects, by going to select and go to mesh separate. And that will separate the objects again. So now we have these pieces separated. Okay, but these are still together. So it won't separate objects that you've actually merged vertices on. So we've got these separated again, so you can separate those. Alright, so make sure that the top tab is separated and this piece is separated, so when we texture, it'll make it a little bit easier to add materials and UV map it. Okay, so how do we UV map something this intricate? Again, we're going to start with just doing the shape of the base, okay? And the first thing I like to do is go ahead and add a new material to it. So assign new material. I'm going to call this just create blend, and we're going to basically call this the energy drink texture, TX. Okay, something like that. I'm not really worried about the tab just yet. I'm going to put that in the same layer, but we can actually create, since we're laying out UVs, we can actually create, or we can add materials to that as well. You can have it separate, you can put it all in one UV map if you want. Yeah, you can separate UV maps out. You can add materials instead of UV maps. It's really up to you, but if you have a texture, you're going to have to add a UV. Okay, there's no way of getting around it. Okay, so what we're going to do now is with the base selected, we're going to go into create UVs, and we're going to do automatic mapping. Okay, just going to click on the option box, reset it, and project. Okay, so we're going to see how that's looking. Okay. Alright, so we've got the automatic mapping working. Let's take a look at what it looks like in UV Texture Editor. So go to Window, UV Texture Editor, and this is what we got. This is a good place to start because most of the time it does a really, really good job of getting it set up for you. This is not what I'm going to use, of course, just like the cereal box. It's just a starting point. Again, it's just a starting point. So let's go ahead and go in here, and what I want to do with this is I want to start setting up my layers. So I'm going to go to Control A, and notice that we have our layer editor here. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my base into a layer. So select the base of the can and click on create a new layer and assign selected objects. So it's created a new layer and added the object to it. The V is for visible. If you click it off, it turns it off. If you click that second one next to it, T is for template, and R is for reference. So reference is it's still there, but you can't select it. Okay? Now don't get confused when you actually add something and you put it on a reference. You're like, wait, I can't select it. What's going on? Try to remember that you selected R. Alright, so I can click on the base again. Alright, so I'm going to double click on the layer and rename it as base. Save. I'm going to click on this one. Make sure you're in object mode up here. Select object type. And click on the icon again to add a layer. And I can turn the visibility on and off. And I'm going to double click on that and call this the tab. Click Save. And I also want to put this in there as well. I want that part to be part of the tab. I'm not going to combine it or anything, but I'm going to go ahead and go in here and right click over it and go Add Selected Objects. Now in the render layers you can remove selected objects, you can empty the layer, pulls everything out of there, you can delete the layer. So those are things you need to know. So now when I turn that on and off, let's add selected objects. So now it'll take those off automatically. This helps with basically creating a scene that you can clean up by just putting things in layers, and you can concentrate on either modeling, texturing, rendering, or animating without having all the objects in the scene. You can have them in layers. So this becomes extremely beneficial, and you can be a lot more efficient when using layers, just like Photoshop. Alright, so we got a good start. And when we look at the UV texture editor, we see that I know this is the base of the bottle. That's fine. That's not what I like because I see huge problems in here, issues. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to minimize that, and I want to add my own UV map and how I want to select this and how I want to break this apart. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start up in here, right click and go to face. I'm going to select this face and I'm going to shift select this face. Okay, so notice that goes all the way around. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I can either continue doing that going all the way down the bottle, which really doesn't work. You can only do it once. If I hold down the shift key and click on that and double click on that, sometimes it will go around, sometimes it doesn't. And it looks like it is. It's actually working the way it's supposed to. In Maya 2012, that's what I'm using here. Sometimes it doesn't work. But anyway, you can continue. If it doesn't work, don't worry. You can go to the front view. And this is how I select things very quickly. Control Z. Always use your front, side, orthographic, top views because it's much faster selecting things. Okay. The thing is, reason why I like to do outside selection is because of the ability to, if you go inside selections, you may get other pieces you don't want. So if I go in here and do a selection here, if I hold down the Control Shift by adding, it selects inside pieces I don't want from the top. So that becomes a hassle. So I want to go into the outside, at least get down far enough. So I'm going to hold the Shift key down, select one face, double click on the other, and that kind of got me down far enough to where I can go to the side view. Hold down the Control Shift, that will add faces on top of what the selection that you have. Again, you don't want to go too far down, because you can see that's the inside of the bottom. So we got that far. Let's go down. And it's kind of a tricky area right here, but we'll go ahead and select it. And we'll click on, I'm just holding on the Shift key. Select one and double click on the other. Select one, double click on the other. That's how I'm creating that selection. What we're trying to do is we want to select just the outside of the base, because that's the part the texture is going to be on. Now, for argument's sake, we're going to go ahead and lay out all the UVs of the can, except for the tab. We can lay out the tab too, but I'll show you how to do that. Anyway, so we're going to go in here. So nothing else is selected, nothing inside is selected accidentally. We're going to leave that to something else. I'm going to UV those separately. Okay, so now let's go in here and go to Create UVs and go to Cylindrical Mapping. And just edit, reset settings, and project. Okay. Alright, so we've got a cylindrical map going around it, and let's take a look at the UVs. Now, the UVs are proportionately correct. That means they laid them out the way it should. You don't want to squeeze them in or squish them in to the box, into the UV space. Okay, what you want to do you want to go ahead and select the UVs. Okay. And we want to hit the W key and move them down. So I'm right clicking, and I think you can't see what I'm doing here because Camtasia is not reading that, but I'm right clicking over this space and clicking on UVs and then moving them down. Okay. Alright, so right clicking in the UV texture area will give you UV face, vertex, or edge mode. Don't mistake that for this area here. Okay, so I'm going to click on face here. And what we're going to do now is, now that we have all these faces, I'm going to right click and click on faces and then select them. You can see very quickly that it selects all the ones on the outside. So that's a good start. Okay. Alright, I'm going to hit the 3 key. And notice that it gives me a preview of what's happening up here. Okay, that looks good. I'll go down here, hit the preview key, and notice that it's sticking right where I want it to go. Okay. So right now I'm going to work on the top. I'm not going to worry about the sides just yet. Hit the 1 key again. Click off of here. Now let's go to the top and let's see what, and this is what I love about this, is I can go in here, go into my UV texture editor, and I can go into faces, and I can select, or I can go to UVs and select these UVs. Now your UVs may look different, guys. I mean, it just depends on how you do things. If they do, don't worry. So I'm going to move that out. That's the top, and I'm guessing this is the bottom. Okay. But I notice some of you guys are making a mistake when you start your UV texturing process, that you're not in object mode. You have to be in object mode. You cannot be in component mode. You'll get a whole different look if you're in component mode. Make sure you start your texturing in object mode. So some of you had made that mistake before, so don't do it in here. You'll get results similar to mine. So I'm going to select these guys here, and I'm just moving them out. And I'm not sure where all this is coming from, but I'm guessing that's from the bottom or the top. So I'm just going to move them around here. I want to get them out of here. If I select I'm going to click the UV shell. So I select just these UVs. Right click and go to select. You're not going to see this, but select shell, and that selects the whole shell, and you can move that. So all you need to do is select a portion of it and then move it out off to the side. Basically, I just want to be able to select these very easily, and just got to get them out of the way. So I'm just moving them out. Okay. Again, if you think about doing these UVs this way, it makes sense. Let's click on this and smooth that. It's tedious work, but it's not that hard. It's just tedious. So I'm going to move these out of the way a little bit to find out where these are at. We may have to, sew UVs. We're going to have to move UVs around, rotate UVs just like we did with the cereal box. It really depends. But let's try to move this along. And I'm not going to be talking a whole lot during this. So you're just going to have to watch as I'm just kind of separating these out a little bit so I can get to them a little bit better. Rotate them if I need to. I do like how they're all lined up. Okay. I'm thinking this is one of the edges or the rings or something, so I'm going to have to figure out what I'm going to do with those. Okay. Alright. Since one of these is totally finished, and that's this part here, let's find out what the top and bottom is. So I'm going to go to UV, select the very top of these UVs, and make sure they correspond to the top of these UVs on the energy drink, and they are. So I'm going to click on here again. I'm going to select the whole thing, hit the R key, and scale it uniformly. And we're going to pop that back in. Now, it's very important that you scale this uniformly and don't scale it like that. Scale it uniform. Non-uniform is selecting the top, going Y or X. Uniformly is clicking on the centerpiece. And let's move that. Looks like it disappeared a little bit for a second. Okay. Because I'm running Camtasia, I'm going to have some issues with performance. I keep getting this window. So I'm going to get in here, and I'm going to bring this and scale this up as much as I can and fit it into this UV space. And I'm going to keep it down low. Okay. Scale that up. Move that around a little bit. Okay, there we go. Okay, I want to just leave a little space in there, make sure that, okay, that looks good. I want to see where the edge is on this thing, on the model itself. Okay, that's in the back on the side, that's good. So I'm just looking at to see where that edge is, and we got to, try to stay away from that edge. Okay. So we're going to see the can from the front anyway. We're not going to have a whole lot from the back and the sides. Okay, so that's where that edge is. And that'll go all the way up there and all the way down. And that's fine. It's probably an error we're not going to be seeing anyway, because this is the front. Alright, sounds good. And then we'll go ahead and go back into my UVs. Alright, so the top. Let's see what we got with the top. We'll select on faces, and I'm right-clicking over the object, selecting faces. We didn't lose anything. When I click off again, they come back again. So I'm just going to, you may not see me doing this, but I'm right-clicking, going to face, and then I'm marquee selecting, and I'm going to minimize, and let's see how much of the top it got. And it got the whole thing on the top, which is great. We don't have to do anything. The only thing that I wish it wouldn't have done is the sides, okay? Because those are going to stretch terribly. Okay? So this is the top of the can anyway. It's kind of a metallic aluminum, brushed aluminum. So what I'm going to do is anything, I'm going to deselect anything in here, and the automatic mapping's not perfect, so I'm going to deselect everything that's facing the side view. So just take your time and Control deselect, and see how it's getting shiny. I'm going to take that. That's kind of a problem. That's the blend material that's doing that. It's shining, and that's kind of going to be a problem for us to see what we're doing. So I'm going to click that off, that off. This is pretty flat right here, so I'm going to keep that on. just these edges that are really straight up and down, you really can't see them very well, I've got to turn off, basically. Okay, so from the top view you can see a little bit of that, but it's going to be stretched, so I'm going to kind of leave those. Okay. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to re-UV map this. I'm going to hit the 4 key, make sure nothing else is selected, the bottom or anything. It's kind of a trick that I've learned through the years, is that I'm going to go in here and re-UV map that using planar mapping. It's going to take a picture from the top. So I'm going to planar map that. So I'm going to go in the y-axis that's facing up and down and click project. And notice that it does a really good job. And I'm going to go into my UV texture editor, and you can see that it placed it perfectly in this square. I'm going to go to UV, select it, and move it out, and place it down over here. Okay, so I'm going to scale this down and move that around. And this is going to be the top. Okay, so I'm going to place that in there. Use the texture space, all the texture space I can. Make it a little bit smaller so I can get pieces to fit in here if I need to.